Bafana Bafana will face Cameroon in the round of 16 at the Africa Cup of Nations. It's taking place in Rabat, Morocco, marking a significant challenge against the five-time champion. So to give us an update on these events and everything happening in Morocco, we've roped in Far Post editor Mthokozisi Dube. Thanks so much for joining us. We've been up late into the night watching football, but I want us to focus a little bit on some of the events that have been happening, you know, off the pitch, around the pitch. Let's start with yet another complaint by Coach Hugo Broos. After a week of criticizing the vibe at the Africa Cup of Nations, he complained that the preparations since flying to Rabat from Marrakesh have been beset by substandard logistics. So the team, they're residing in the Moroccan capital, but they were asked to train in a nearby town of Saleh. And then CAF responded, Mthokozisi, saying that the South Africans had ample time to raise any objections, but they chose not to. Have you gotten any feedback with regards to this? What is your take on it?
Look, I mean, CAF have actually come out to say teams were notified of where their training venues would be and where the hotel would be. So they had an opportunity to, you know, come down and obviously have a look at how the setup would look like, which they should have done. You know, I think that's part of your preparations when you are playing at a tournament like this. So I think to now come out and complain at this stage, I mean, I think it also shows a lack of preparation on the part of the association.
Yeah, it also reminds me then of why we had to play another match in order to qualify for the World Cup because of administrative issues within, you know, this Bafana Bafana team squad, larger admin structures around them. We keep complaining about stuff that other teams are like, well, we have personnel and people to ensure that this, you know, doesn't happen. And then I suppose on the other hand, if you look at Senegal, they've been doing so well that they've just stayed in the same town of Tanzania. They haven't had to move. And part of the perks of playing particularly well is that you then don't have to move around. And that's something to take into consideration as well.
Yeah, but look, I mean, that's also a bit tricky because Bafana would argue, I mean, the game against Egypt, obviously a bit controversial circumstances, that whole VAR, they would argue that we could have won that game or, you know, drawn and the Group B table would have looked a bit different. But I think the most important thing is obviously to prepare, be able to go and check how things look. I mean, the Cameroon coach was asked more or less a similar question, and he said, look, we will play, we'll train anyway, we're ready for it. So yeah, so I think SAFA should have done their due diligence just to make sure that they're happy with the training facilities. I'm sure there's a lot more training facilities that they could have you know, been given in Rabat.
What do you think about his comments about the vibe? You know, I did look online on X, for example, some of the comments that have been coming through from other people attending. And if you did look at some of the matches that they played, the stadiums were largely empty in the group stages, which I suppose is not really, you know, too unexpected. But generally, what feedback have you been getting about the vibe in Morocco?
Look, I followed the Afcon in Ivory Coast. So I think I'm able to give a bit of a informed judgment. The Ivory Coast Afcon, for me, you know, you could feel that this is an Afcon. You know, the atmosphere, the euphoria around the country, be it in Korogo, you know, in a village about 400 kilometers from Abidjan. You know, you could feel that there is an Afcon here. You know, it's a bit different here. Maybe because of the timing. It's winter here. It's raining. I mean, yesterday I attended the Mali game versus Tunisia. I mean, it was raining throughout the game. Of course, it was a full, you know, packed stadium. But in the other cities, maybe the weather is also, you know, had people staying away from the stadiums. So I think there's quite a number of factors. But the coach is right. It's different. It's different from the Ivory Coast edition.
Yeah, I think, what people have to take into consideration is that Africa is such a huge continent. Our weather guy, Joel, mentioned this as well. You were saying, North Africa, the weather and the climate is going to be completely different at this time of the year. And I think that was one of the challenges that CAF spoke about when it comes to hosting Afcon on the continent, is the shift in weather patterns, which will make it very challenging for spectators. Hugo Broos also expressed his concern about having to train at the same high-performance centre as Cameroon. Have you gotten some insight into that, and what are your thoughts there?
Look, yeah, we did attend training yesterday, and I think he's right when it comes to that, because look, you could have a case where your next opponent actually spies on you and watches your training. They're able to see how you train, and perhaps because this was match day -1, how they would set up the team. So there is that concern, and I think that makes a lot of sense because the host uses one of those training grounds, and they could actually be able to see your sessions. So I totally agree with him on that one.
So if we look at the fixture of Morocco then taking on Tanzania, let me know what your thoughts are with regards to this particular fixture. Do you think that Tanzania can flip the script, cause an upset? They are the hosts. Obviously, no one wants to see the hosts kicked out, especially at this stage of the competition, except for us, naturally. But it always is something where a host nation, we don't really care about that, but a host nation progressing all the way through is something that's lovely, because we know what it's like to be a host nation as well. Ashraf Hakimi getting perhaps some more game time there. Give us your thoughts about this particular match.
Yeah, look, if the hosts come out at this point, life will be difficult.
I know.
But I think Tanzania are here because they got 2 draws, which is 2 points. Very lucky to be at this stage of the competition, because their teams that had 3 points, but did not finish third. Like Tanzania have. So it's going to be difficult for them. They've obviously got to score goals against a team that's very stingy with goals. I think they defend very well, but they also score, goals up front. Morocco have scored 7 goals, at this point of the tournament. I think one of the highest scorers so far. So it's going to be a very difficult one for Tanzania. But maybe also reflects on their league. The fact that the teams there are able to register up to 11 foreigners. It obviously affects the quality of your local players, because the top performers are obviously the foreign players. When it comes to the national team, you've got some players that are not really prominent, performers in their teams. So it's going to be a very tough one for them. The home side also have their fans, behind them.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be an easy one for Miguel Gamonde and his boys.
So as I let you go, I saw a video clip from Rio Ferdinand talking about that he thinks that Afcon should be given, more credibility, more status in the global football space. Because if you look at, all the African players that are here, he says the other leagues are boring. The loss of those players is actually, he believes, has made a difference. Do you think that general sentiment is now starting to spread, particularly in Europe?
Absolutely, and I think he's right, because you look at a team like Sunderland. They had 6 players away, during this period, and those 6 players are players that are quite key. You look at Manchester United; they've got 3 players, and those 3 players, one of them, Brian Bumo, is a top goal scorer with 8 goals at the moment. Amad Diallo is very key to them. Mazraoui is also a very important player. So they've got 3 players that are not participating for a full month. So that obviously affects them. You look at other teams in the EPL, for instance, in Arsenal. They don't have a player who's at the Afcon and they're cruising. So it obviously, I think it does affect the the quality of the league because of how important African players are. I mean, you look at the Serie A, I think at the start of, League One, at the start of the tournament, over 50 players were away now at the Afcon. So it definitely affects the quality of the game. And Rio is right. I think it needs to stop a bit the same way it does when the Euros are playing. I mean, we don't see the English Premier League playing alongside the Euros. Maybe also the timing of the competition is something to look at.
So what do you, as I let you go, are there any teams that are surprising you? Are there any fixtures that you're looking forward to, obviously besides Bafana Bafana and Cameroon? And then any predictions that you have? We have our graphic on air currently of the upcoming fixtures now into the week as well.
Look, I think the team that surprised me is Mozambique. I mean, for them to be where they are, I mean, getting that win and getting into the knockout stage. And then Nigeria have obviously started off very, very well.
Yep.
I think they've been they've not done very well, in these tournaments. I mean, they missed out on World Cup qualification. So they've actually, done very well. I see them as one of the favorites in this competition. Mozambique as well. But they're actually meeting on Monday. It's going to be a very interesting game. In terms of prediction, look, I see in that game, I honestly see, Nigeria obviously, going through, all the way. I'd say Nigeria will go all the way to the final.
Perfect. Mthokozisi, always great chatting to you, some great insights. We've been chatting about some of the aspects around Afcon off the pitch, training, Hugo Brussel's comments, just some of the teams that have stood out for him as well.